The $10,000 dress my daughter-in-law wore was a direct contrast to the way she had me seated in the back row behind the photographer, practically in the parking lot. She looked me dead in the eye and whispered one word: embarrassment. That was the day I realized I wasn't their mother anymore. I was a liability. If you've ever been made to feel worthless by the people you love, please comment 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If you disagree with this story, still leave a like and comment 0. I want to hear it all. It wasn't the ceremony that broke me. It was the whispered word, liability, a word Brandon's wife used to describe me, his own mother, on the happiest day of his life. The shame of the navy blue dress. The sun beat down on the Ashworth estate, a sprawling monument to old Denver money. The sheer size of the place, all manicured gardens and imported marble, felt less like a home and more like a carefully curated museum. My heart, however, felt heavy, a cold stone lodged beneath my ribs. I smoothed the fabric of my navy blue dress. It was the nicest piece I owned, purchased 5 years prior for my husband Robert's retirement party. Back then, Robert had told me the color matched my eyes. Today, it felt like the color of quiet resignation. I remembered the moment earlier, just as the 500 guests began to arrive. Vivian, my new daughter-in-law, had found me near the bridal party entrance. She was flawless, a vision in silk and diamonds, every movement practiced, every smile measured. She hadn't said a word about the dress itself, which was a kindness in its own way. Instead, she addressed the matter of my presence. Eleanor, she had said, her voice, a low calculated hiss that wouldn't carry past the nearest marble column. We need to address the seating chart, your poverty. It will embarrass us. This is a very high-profile event. We're keeping you discreet. Discreet. That was the polite word for shameful. Brandon, my successful lawyer son, stood beside her adjusting his tie. He didn't look at me. He just nodded, that small, sickening gesture of agreement that confirmed he was fully complicit in this cruelty. My throat tightened. I had spent 35 years teaching high school English, building a life of dignity and quiet pride in our little suburban home. My retirement fund was modest, but it was mine. Yet in their world, I was merely a relic of a past Brandon desperately wanted to leave behind. A wedding coordinator, stiff and judgmental in her headset, approached me. "Mrs. Patterson, row 12, seat 15. That's the last row, ma'am." Immediately behind the media equipment, I had walked down the long aisle alone, past the whispering guests, in designer suits, past Vivian's family members, who gave me the same detached clinical assessment one might give a strange exhibit in a zoo. The quiet that followed me wasn't the respectful hush for the groom's mother. It was the uneasy silence of people witnessing something awkward, something beneath their refined attention. I found my assigned spot. It was indeed in the absolute farthest corner of the grounds, next to stacked camera bags, practically inhaling the exhaust fumes from the catering trucks. Looking forward, the altar was a distant, unreachable stage. I could barely make out Brandon's tuxedoed figure greeting guests. He was the successful man I had raised. The boy who once brought me wilted dandelions and promised I was the most beautiful woman in the world was gone, the ghost of a memory. A sudden flicker of movement drew my attention to the front rows. A man impeccably dressed and radiating a quiet confidence was being guided to a prestigious seat near the Ashworth family. He was older, silver-haired, his posture commanding. For a fraction of a second, his eyes swept across the crowd, landing briefly on my isolated row. There was a spark, a distant, familiar echo in his sharp blue gaze, but it vanished instantly. He was a stranger, likely a major client or a high-ranking politician. I dismissed the fleeting recognition as wishful thinking. I sat there watching the ceremony begin, a pageant of wealth and status. Vivian floated down the aisle in a gown that looked less like fabric and more like frozen light. She was beautiful, yes, but cold. As she passed my row, her eyes were fixed straight ahead, avoiding me completely. Brandon's eyes were fixed on her with the fierce, possessive love I had always longed for as his mother. That was the true pain. the realization that the kind of fierce, protective love I had given him was now reserved for the woman who actively despised me. I gripped the worn leather clutch bag in my lap, trying to focus on the minister's words. I told myself to be grateful. At least they invited you. At least you are here. That particular flavor of self-deception was how I had survived the last 3 years of being the obligatory parent, the unwanted mother. The pain became a physical thing, a deep, persistent ache beneath my breastbone. I thought of Robert, my late husband. He would have never tolerated this. He would have demanded I be seated next to him, front and center. But Robert was gone, leaving me alone to navigate the icy currents of my own family. I closed my eyes, trying to swallow the lump of pride and shame, willing the ceremony to end quickly. I had endured the looks, the whispers, the isolation. I just needed to get through the next 40 minutes. I recalled a small, forgotten detail from a few weeks ago. I had brought over a homemade apple pie, a family favorite from their childhood, for Brandon and Vivian. Vivian had accepted it with a thin smile, then placed it prominently on the counter and said, "Thank you, Eleanor. We'll give it to the catering staff. We really can't have homemade food here. It looks unprofessional." The insult hadn't been in the rejection of the pie. It was in the word unprofessional, implying my love, my effort, my very essence was substandard. And here I was, the ultimate substandard offering hidden in the back. I focused on the quiet, the smell of the pristine grass, the distant sound of the marble fountain. I willed my heart to slow down. I was Eleanor Patterson. I had taught hundreds of children to love Shakespeare and use a semicolon correctly. I was a person of value. Why couldn't they see it? Just as I prepared for the quiet misery to settle in for the duration of the vows, the air shifted. I felt the slight weight shift on the bench beside me. It was so unexpected, so jarringly intimate in this sea of isolation, that I inhaled sharply. I opened my eyes and turned my head slowly. I closed my eyes, trying to swallow the lump of pride and shame, willing the ceremony to end quickly. That's when I felt the slight weight shift on the bench beside me. Someone sat down, and their hand rested gently over mine. I felt the gentle weight of a stranger's hand on mine, and suddenly the humiliation of being Eleanor Patterson, the unwanted mother, vanished. In its place, I was simply a woman accompanied. I was startled, but more than that, I was confused. Who would willingly choose this corner of social Siberia? I opened my eyes and turned slowly to look at the man beside me. He was the same distinguished gentleman I had glimpsed in the front row. Silver hair, impeccably styled sharp blue eyes that were now crinkled at the corners, and an air of quiet, undeniable power. Everything about him screamed wealth, the kind that didn't need to shout. The Italian leather of his shoes, the subtle gleam of an elegant heavy watch, the perfect tailoring of his charcoal suit. This man didn't just have money. He was money, and he was deliberately choosing to sit next to me, the embarrassment hidden in the back. "Act like you're with me," he murmured, his voice low, urgent, and rich like aged whiskey. Before I could process the absurdity of the command, he placed his hand gently over mine, not clutching but resting, offering a subtle, stabilizing warmth. He offered me a small, conspiratorial smile, as if we were old friends sharing a lovely afternoon and a private joke. The interruption of dignity. The transformation was immediate and jarring. Suddenly, I wasn't the isolated, pathetic woman anymore. I was part of a couple, a well-dressed, sophisticated couple, sharing an intimate moment during a wedding ceremony. The subtle whispers around us took on a new, frantic edge. I could hear them, the same society matrons who had judged my navy dress just moments ago. "Who is that man with Brandon's mother? He looks important." Maybe we misjudged the situation. The anxiety in their voices was delicious, a flavor of vindication I hadn't tasted in years. I had no idea who this man was, or why he had intervened, but a deep, primal instinct told me to trust him. He was offering me a lifeline, a temporary shield against the relentless cruelty of my own family. I followed his lead, forcing a soft, appreciative laugh when he leaned in closer. Just then, during a brief pause in the ceremony, Theodore leaned in again. "Your son is about to look this way. When he does smile at me like I just told you something utterly fascinating, I obeyed instantly. Sure enough, Brandon's gaze swept over the crowd, a habitual check on his well-organized life, and landed directly on my row. When he saw me, his mother, whom he had deliberately exiled, sitting composedly next to this figure of quiet authority, laughing softly, Brandon's face went completely white. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, or perhaps a devastating legal contradiction. Vivian, distracted by her new husband's sudden pallor, followed his stare. Her perfectly composed expression, the one she'd spent 3 hours perfecting, fractured for a moment. Her eyes narrowed to slits when she saw me no longer alone, and pathetic, but accompanied by someone who undeniably belonged in the front row. The mysterious man gave my hand a gentle, approving squeeze. "Perfect," he murmured. "Your son looks like he just lost a major case." "Who are you?" I whispered back, trying to maintain the illusion of casual conversation. "Someone who should have been in your life a long time ago, Eleanor," he replied, his gaze intense. "We'll talk after the ceremony. For now, just enjoy watching them try to figure out what's happening." And I did. For the first time in what felt like decades, I had power in this dynamic. 50 years lost. The ceremony concluded, and the minister pronounced them husband and wife. Theodore immediately stood his height commanding, and offered me his arm like a proper gentleman, escorting his dear friend. "Shall we proceed to the reception, my dear Eleanor?" He spoke my name, the sound of it familiar, warm, and utterly magnetic. As we walked toward the reception tent, I could feel the gazes drilling into my back. The murmurs had intensified, no longer dismissive, but filled with frantic curiosity. The shift in respect was staggering, achieved purely through the silent endorsement of the man on my arm. "You never told me your name," I said quietly, as we moved across the immaculate lawn. He stopped, turning to face me fully. His smile was warm, transforming his serious face. "Theodore Blackwood. But you used to call me Theo." The world tilted. Theodore Blackwood. The name hit me like a physical blow, resurrecting a flood of memories I had carefully buried for 50 years. Theo. My Theo. I stopped abruptly, the breath catching in my throat. "Theo. That's impossible. You were supposed to be in London. You were supposed to be married." He guided me to a quiet, sheltered corner of the garden, away from the stream of well-wishers. Up close, despite the lines of age and the silver hair, I saw the boy I had loved desperately when I was a student. His eyes were the same startling blue. "I never married," he said simply. "And I never stopped looking for you." His words hung between us, like a fragile bridge built across 50 years of silence. I felt 18 again, and 68 simultaneously. "Looking for me." The accusation in my voice surprised me. "You left for that program and never came back. I thought you forgot about me." His expression grew pained, the quiet confidence cracking. "I wrote you, Eleanor. Dozens of letters. I called your apartment for months. I came back to Denver twice, but you had moved and no one would tell me where. You never got any of my letters, did you?" The final piece of the devastating puzzle snapped into place with sickening clarity. My own mother, who had always viewed Theo's family money as a dangerous influence, and who had always pushed me toward the safe and stable choice, Robert. She was the one who had intercepted them. The ultimate act of betrayal. I took a deep, shaky breath, looking from Theo to the opulent reception tent, then back to the man who represented everything I had lost. The life I had built, a good life, a solid marriage to Robert, a successful son, was suddenly framed by a massive, heartbreaking what if. The irony was the cruelest twist. The mother who destroyed my chance at love was now being disgraced by the son born of the safe life she had forced upon me. I looked at Theo, then at the son, who was ashamed of me. I felt the final vestiges of my old life, the duty, the obligation, the blind love fall away like a discarded coat. My choice was suddenly clear, absolute, and liberating. 50 years lost because of a mother's manipulation. I looked at Theo, then at the son who was ashamed of me. "I would very much like to leave this reception, Theodore. I think we have some catching up to do," I said, and for the first time I chose myself. Leaving that reception with Theo was the physical act of cutting the cord, but the real break came the next morning. Not from my son's remorse, but from his mother-in-law's blatant attempt to buy my silence. I walked out of the Ashworth estate that day, with Theo feeling the eyes of 500 people drilling into my back. Yet for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't carrying the weight of my son's shame. I was walking toward my own future. Theo drove me home, not to his impressive downtown residence, but to my small familiar house in the suburbs. He didn't press for details. He simply let me talk, absorbing 50 years of life loss and the quiet dignity of my teaching career. He ordered dinner, not expensive restaurant fare, but the simple, comforting kind of food you crave after a shock, and sat with me until midnight. He left with a promise: "I'm not leaving this time, Eleanor. Not until you tell me to." The sound of panic. The real world hit the next morning. My phone had been off, but when I finally charged it, the flood of missed calls and frantic text messages from Brandon was overwhelming. His tone was a frantic blend of anger and panic. He hadn't called out of remorse. He had called because he had Googled Theodore Blackwood. The man who was once an embarrassment was now suddenly the key to their social and financial stability. The shame was still there, but it was now Brandon's, not mine. The true escalation, however, came with a sharp rap on my front door. I opened it to find Catherine Ashworth, Vivian's mother, standing on my doorstep. She was everything her daughter was: perfectly coiffed, aggressively confident, and radiating the assumption that her presence was a gift. "Mrs. Patterson," she stated, sweeping into my modest living room as if conducting an unpleasant health inspection. "We need to have a conversation. Your relationship with Mr. Blackwood is causing significant complications for my family." I offered her a cup of coffee, a genuine Southern hospitality reflex which she waved away with disdain. "No thank you. This shouldn't take long." She settled into my favorite leather armchair, a piece Robert and I had saved up for years ago, with the air of a queen forced to sit on a common bench. Her eyes swept over the faded wallpaper and my collection of classic literature, clearly assessing the disappointing lack of value. The calculation of worth. "Let's get straight to the point," Catherine snapped, dropping the pretense of politeness. "We both know this is about Vivian's comment at the wedding, and we both know this is about the building." She reached into her immaculate designer handbag and pulled out a check. Not a casual gesture, but a deliberate performance. $50. 0, 0, 0, she stated, placing the paper on my coffee table between us. The sight of the bold figures $50,000 was staggering. "This is for your cooperation. You convince Mr. Blackwood to honor the existing lease with Ashworth Properties. You receive compensation for your assistance." I stared at the check, not tempted by the zeros but by the sheer staggering audacity of the woman. She truly believed that my pain, my humiliation, my very existence could be packaged and managed with a check. "Mrs. Ashworth," I said, my voice quiet, measured, carrying the weight of 35 years of teaching discipline. "Are you attempting to bribe me?" "I am offering a mutually beneficial arrangement," she corrected smoothly, her smile razor sharp. She leaned forward, the smell of expensive perfume filling the air. "Mrs. Patterson, everyone is for sale. It's just a matter of finding the right price. And we both know money is a concern for you." The final cut. Her words, "everyone is for sale," were the final crucial blow. They didn't just insult me. They insulted Robert's memory, my teaching career, and the life of quiet dignity I had struggled to maintain. I rose slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the rose bushes Robert and I had planted together years ago. They were blooming beautifully indifferent to the financial negotiations inside. "You know what's funny, Mrs. Ashworth," I said without turning around. "Yesterday I might have been tempted, not because I need the money, though I certainly could use it, but because I have been so accustomed to being dismissed and undervalued that $50,000 would have felt like a bizarre form of validation." I finally turned to face her. "But today I know what I'm actually worth, and it's considerably more than $50,000. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the check. I held it for a moment, absorbing the cold reality of their calculation. "This is insulting, Mrs. Ashworth. Not just the amount, though, that is laughably inadequate, but the insult is in the assumption that my relationship with Theodore is some kind of performance that can be purchased and managed. With a sudden, decisive motion that felt deeply therapeutic, I tore the check in half, then in half again, letting the pieces flutter down onto the polished wood of my coffee table. The tiny sound was the most satisfying thing I had heard all morning. Catherine's composure shattered completely. She sprang from the chair, her face flushed with disbelief and anger. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Patterson. We have influence. We can make things very difficult for people who cross us. You're explaining reality, Mrs. Ashworth." "Thank you for that clarity," I replied, feeling an exhilarating sense of freedom. "I tore up $50,000 because some things cannot be bought. Now I have a choice. Forgive them or teach them the real cost of dignity." I walked towards the door, ready to leave the shredded paper and the toxic encounter behind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Theo. "I tore up $50,000 because some things cannot be bought. Now I have a choice. Forgive them or teach them the real cost of dignity. What would you do?" If you want me to accept Theo's offer and deliver justice, comment the word justice below. Your answer decides what happens next. Theo didn't just buy a building. He bought the contract of my vindication. I realized he wasn't just interested in business. He was interested in justice, served cold and legally binding. I walked out of my house, leaving the shredded check pieces on the coffee table and the stunned silence of Catherine Ashworth behind. My confrontation with her had left me shaken, but also strangely electrified. It was the first time I had truly stood my ground in years, and the feeling was intoxicating. Theo's call immediately after that encounter was a welcome sound. "How delighted I am to hear you had a productive conversation. Eleanor," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "I hope you were appropriately impressed by Mrs. Ashworth's charm and subtlety." I told him what happened, about the $50,000 offer, and my decisive, satisfying destruction of the check. $50,000. Ridiculously inadequate, he said, the amusement fading into something cold and serious. "You are worth considerably more than that, my dear." He paused, then his tone shifted to the mischievous voice I remembered from 5 decades ago. "How would you like to help me send a message to the Ashworth family about the proper way to treat people they consider beneath them? The architect of vengeance." An hour later, I was seated in the back seat of Theo's sleek black Mercedes, heading toward the downtown financial district. The cityscape, usually a distant collection of glass and steel, suddenly felt intimate and personal. Theo was giving me a private tour of the world he commanded. We pulled up to a towering glass structure, one of the most prestigious commercial addresses in Denver. "Where are we going?" I asked, feeling a thrilling mix of anticipation and disbelief. "To meet with my attorney, Margaret Chen," he said, opening the door for me. "We have some papers to sign. The kind that will make the Ashworth family very, very sorry they ever heard the name Eleanor Patterson." Margaret Chen's office was a masterpiece of precise, expensive efficiency, offering a commanding view of the city. Margaret herself was sharp-eyed, possessing the kind of focused intensity that comes from years of protecting vast wealth. "Mrs. Patterson," Margaret said, her handshake firm. "Theodore has told me quite a lot about your interesting encounter with the Ashworth family. It sounds like a remarkable conflict of dignity versus entitlement." Theo got straight to the point. "Margaret has been looking into Ashworth Properties' financial situation. What she found is quite fascinating, Eleanor." Margaret pulled out a thick file, spreading papers across the desk, like a dealer laying out cards. "Ashworth Properties appears successful on the surface, but they are significantly overleveraged. Mr. Blackwood's purchased building isn't just their main office. The lease payments represent nearly 30% of their operating capital." The legal gauntlet. I began to understand the terrifying brilliance of Theo's move. "Meaning," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "they can't afford to relocate." "Exactly," Theo confirmed, his expression grim. "Not without taking a massive financial hit that would likely force them to lay off half their workforce and severely damage their prestige." This was not just business. It was strategic warfare waged on behalf of my honor. The fact that the Ashworths, who had judged me for my simple life, were now standing on quicksand built from my humiliation, was a delicious, almost unbelievable irony. What are our options? I asked, surprised by the natural way the word "our" slipped out. I was no longer a bystander. I was a collaborator. Margaret presented two options: simply proceed with the termination, financial ruin for the Ashworths, or the more compelling choice. We could offer them alternative lease terms, a higher rate, a shorter duration with specific clauses that would give us considerable control over their business operations. What kind of control? Theo's smile was predatory. The kind that would require them to meet certain standards of conduct in their business dealings, standards that will be outlined in very specific detail. He was going to write their humiliation into a legal contract. The contract of vindication. We spent the next hour meticulously going over the clauses. They were ruthless, requiring things like significant mandatory contributions to underserved community programs, my former teaching area, and most crucially specific clauses about tenant public conduct and representation of affiliates. Finally, Theo handed me a document. "Eleanor, I want you to be a signator on this lease agreement." Me. "But I'm not involved in the business side." "You are the injured party," he said firmly, his eyes meeting mine. "This entire situation exists because of how they treated you. I think it's appropriate that you have direct input into the terms of their rehabilitation." I thought about Catherine's arrogant assumption that I was for sale. I thought about Vivian's cold dismissal. Theo was offering me a chance to reclaim my narrative, not through anger but through a piece of paper signed with the full authority of the law. I signed the document with a steady hand. "The Ashworth family has 72 hours to agree to these terms," Margaret stated, closing the file with a decisive snap. "After that, the standard lease termination proceeds automatically." As we prepared to leave, Theo took my hand. "Are you comfortable with this? Once we send this, there's no turning back. This means war, Eleanor." I looked out at the glittering skyline, feeling the intoxicating sense of power mixed with quiet resolve. "War, Theodore." I think I stopped being afraid of that the moment I tore up that check. We had given them a choice: respect or ruin. Now the battlefield shifted back to my home. We gave them 72 hours. 72 hours. For Brandon to choose between the family who shamed his mother and the man who rebuilt her dignity. When my phone rang, I knew the waiting game was over. Brandon's call wasn't an apology. It was a panicked accusation. "Mom, what the hell is going on? You're destroying a whole family's livelihood over a seating arrangement." We had given them 72 hours. 72 hours for the shock of the lease termination offer to turn into crippling panic, and for the Ashworths' immense pride to crash against Theo's equally immense power. My phone rang 2 hours after Margaret Chen delivered the papers. It was Brandon. I was sitting with Theo in his penthouse, watching the Denver skyline transition into evening. A silent, luxurious contrast to the chaos brewing beneath us. I took a deep breath, handed the phone to Theo to put on speaker, and answered. Brandon's voice was tight, high-pitched, and devoid of the lawyerly control he usually maintained. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Vivian's mother just called her in tears. "Something about lease agreements, and impossible demands, and financial ruin." "What did you do?" I leaned back into the comfortable leather chair. "Good evening to you too, sweetheart." "I'm fine, thank you for asking. Don't play games with me. Standard market practices don't include forcing tenants to make public apologies as part of their lease agreements. You're talking about destroying an entire family's livelihood over a wedding seating arrangement." The lawyer's last attempt. His desperation was a stark, ugly thing. He wasn't defending his mother, he was defending his social status and the financial stability his wife provided. "Am I, Brandon? I thought I was simply ensuring that certain standards of human decency were maintained in business relationships," I replied, my voice steady though my heart ached with the finality of our conversation. "This is not about a seating chart. This is about years of being treated like an obligation rather than a person." Theo watched me, his blue eyes intense, providing silent strength. Brandon shifted tactics, moving from accusation to manipulation. "Mom, this is extortion. You're being selfish. Dad wouldn't have wanted this. He always taught us family comes first. You need to think about our future. You're being selfish. The word selfish struck me like a physical blow, yet it didn't hurt. It clarified. He was pulling out the last card he had: guilt and the sacred memory of his father. I knew then that his character had not just been warped by Vivian. It had been flawed all along. Selfish, I repeated slowly, letting the word hang in the silent room. When has anything about the last 3 years been fair to me? Brandon, when was it fair that your wife called me a poverty-stricken embarrassment? Where was your concern for my livelihood when I was sitting alone in that back row? She apologized because Theodore has money and power. Where was her apology before that? Where was yours? The silence on the line was thick with the weight of my unanswered questions. The painful choice. I took a sip of the expensive wine Theo had poured for me, savoring the feeling of being in control of my own destiny, rather than reacting to his demands. What do you want me to do, Brandon? Finally asked his voice, cracking the admission of defeat stark. I knew this was the moment that would define the rest of our relationship. It was time to give him the choice I should have given myself years ago: self-worth or obligation. I want you to choose, Brandon, I said, my voice quiet but absolute. Vivian's family has 72 hours. During those 72 hours, you can stand with the family that humiliated your mother, or you can stand with the mother who loves you despite everything. Theo's hand rested gently on my arm, an anchor. Mom, that's not fair. You can't ask me to choose my wife's career over you. I'm not asking you to choose her career. I'm asking you to choose dignity and respect, I corrected gently. But if you think that the foundation of your marriage is so fragile that you can't defend your own mother, then maybe that foundation needs to crumble. I looked at the phone, then at Theo, who nodded encouragingly. I knew I couldn't wait for his answer. I had to cut the cord completely. The decision had to be mine. I'm done talking, Brandon, I said. The next conversation we have will tell me everything I need to know about what kind of man I raised. Think carefully about what you value. I pressed the red end call button and immediately turned off the phone. The sudden silence was exhilarating. I had made the choice for myself. The story of my life would no longer be written by his expectations. I hung up and turned off my phone, leaving my son hanging in the balance. But here's the question that kept me up all night. Is it worth sacrificing your peace for a child's fake remorse, or should a mother always choose her self-worth? Comment, self-worth, if Eleanor should never look back. The 72 hours felt like 72 years. But at 5:00 p.m. on Wednesday, the call came. Richard Ashworth conceded. The price of their survival was one very public, very humbling apology. I sat in Theo's penthouse, pretending to study architectural plans for the Tuscany house he had purchased that very morning. But in truth, I was simply counting down the minutes. The silence after I hung up on Brandon was heavy, absolute. It was the silence of a relationship finally, irreparably severed. When Theo's phone rang precisely at 5 on Wednesday, I recognized the number immediately. Richard Ashworth, Vivian's father. Theo put the call on speaker. Mr. Blackwood. Richard Ashworth's voice was meticulously controlled, yet strained. I believe you're expecting my call. My family and I would like to accept your terms. Theo's face remained impassive. All of them, Mr. Ashworth, including the public conduct clauses and the community service requirements. Yes, Richard conceded heavily. All of them. And the personal apologies. The terms are non-negotiable, Mr. Ashworth. Your daughter-in-law's public apology to Mrs. Patterson will be delivered exactly as specified. Theo's voice was devoid of gloating, possessing only the cold, hard certainty of financial power. This Friday, the charity luncheon at the country club seems like an appropriate venue. Don't you think Mrs. Patterson will be attending as my guest? Theo hung up. I realized my hands were shaking not from fear, but from the immense gravity of what was about to happen. The uniform of dignity Friday arrived with brilliant, defiant sunshine. Theo had insisted on bringing in a professional stylist. I didn't want to look like a victim who had been granted clemency. I wanted to look like a woman who was worth fighting for. The old navy blue dress was packed away. I wore a new elegant silk dress, in a soft ivory color, a color of peace and clean slate. As Theo and I walked into the country club, the atmosphere was thick with speculation. This was the same social circle that had witnessed my humiliation at the wedding. Now the murmurs were different. No longer dismissive, but frantic, with curiosity about the mystery woman who had brought Theodore Blackwood and the Ashworth family to their knees. We were seated at a prime table near the front. I could see the Ashworths across the room. Vivian looked beautiful as always, but her composure was brittle, her smile fixed and fragile. Brandon was with them, his eyes darting restlessly between his mother-in-law, his wife, and me. I caught his gaze, but this time I didn't feel the old ache of abandonment. I felt only a quiet, resolute pity, the testimony of shame. The luncheon rituals unfolded slowly, punctuated by the coordinator's announcement: Mrs. Vivian Patterson has requested a few minutes to address the gathering. The room fell into an immediate, stunned silence. A public statement from a socialite at a charity event usually meant announcing a massive donation, not a public confession. Vivian walked to the podium, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She was pale, her hands gripping the edges of the podium so tightly, her knuckles were white. She looked out over the crowd, her gaze finding mine and holding it. "Thank you all for your attention," she began, her voice strained but clear. "I wanted to take this opportunity to address something important in front of this community that means so much to my family." She paused, taking a visible gulp of air. I could sense the immense conflict, her pride warring with her family's financial survival. "Last week at my wedding, I said something thoughtless and cruel to my mother-in-law, Eleanor Patterson. I told her that her poverty would embarrass our family, and I treated her with a level of disrespect that was completely unacceptable." The crowd was motionless. This kind of raw public admission was unheard of in their gilded cage. "I was wrong," she continued, her voice cracking slightly on the next words. "Completely, utterly wrong. Eleanor Patterson is a woman who dedicated her life to educating young people, who raised a successful son, and who deserves respect and admiration. I let my own insecurities and prejudices cloud my judgment, and I hurt someone who should have been welcomed into our family with love and gratitude." She stepped back from the podium to scattered, uncertain applause. The apology was delivered precisely according to the terms. The final look, I stood up slowly. The focus of the entire room shifted to me. This was the ultimate high point of the Thoa Man divided by Kwai Tra that the audience craved. "Thank you, Vivian," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone, which Theo had subtly instructed the coordinator to hand me. "Your apology is noted and appreciated." The words were polite, correct, and utterly devoid of warmth or forgiveness. Everyone understood that a legal debt had been paid, but the emotional ledger remained balanced in my favor. I walked back to my table, feeling the immense weight of years of resentment fall away. Then I looked at Brandon. He was sitting with his head bowed, the humiliation complete. I saw the look on his face, not just embarrassment, but a profound personal defeat. It was the face of the boy who had chosen money over his mother, and had lost both. I felt a surge of pity for him, but it was detached clean. I realized I no longer felt angry. He simply didn't matter enough to fuel my anger anymore. My heart was finally healing, and it no longer needed his love to beat. As we gathered our things, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. "Mom, can we talk?" I looked at Theo then, at the phone, and smiled. The choice was mine now and forever. I wouldn't waste another moment of my life on obligation. We walked away from the country club, leaving the society murmurs behind us. Theo looked at me, his eyes full of the love lost 50 years ago. "Are you free, Eleanor?" "For the first time in 50 years, Theo, I am completely free." The story of the unwanted mother had ended. The story of Eleanor, the woman, had just begun. I looked at the Denver skyline, glittering with the promise of a future I had finally chosen for myself. Theo was right. I was free. But freedom isn't just about walking away. It's about defining the value of the ground you stand on. The pain of family betrayal, the silent neglect, the public shaming, the final pathetic attempt to manipulate me had nearly consumed me. For too long I had confused obligation with love, and endured disrespect because I feared being utterly alone. But in that pivotal moment, staring at a shredded check on my coffee table, I understood the most profound truth. Dignity is not a price tag. It is a boundary. When family members demand you sacrifice your honor for their convenience, they are asking you to betray yourself. And no amount of wealth status, or even a son's love, is worth that self-sacrifice. My journey wasn't about revenge. It was about vindication, a legal, emotional, and spiritual reclaiming of the worth I possessed all along. I was not defined by my retirement fund or my suburban home. I was defined by the 40 years I spent enriching young lives, the unwavering self-respect I maintained, and the love I found when I dared to stop shrinking myself. I hope my story offers a mirror for anyone who has been made to feel small or unworthy by those who should cherish them most. Have you ever felt that invisible cut of family betrayal? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and maintaining your honor? Did you find the courage to walk away? The ultimate lesson is this: you do not need permission to be respected. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. My life. The story of Eleanor Patterson, the unwanted mother, has now transitioned into the story of Eleanor, the woman who took her power back. The past is closed, and the future, perhaps with Theo and a house in Tuscany, is bright and wide open. If you connected with my fight for dignity, if you believe in emotional justice, or if you simply enjoyed this tale of a sweet, satisfying victory, please leave a comment with the number 1. Your support means the world. And don't miss the next powerful true story of family resilience and reclaiming your life. Subscribe to Auntie Tales and turn on notifications. The best stories are always the ones that remind us we are strong enough.